to order for July 7th. First thing is the approval of the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion by Grant, second by Jenny to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Citizens to be heard. We hear of anybody? Nobody there? Okay. But that will go into my favorite part of this is employee recognition, so. Got a few of them on the list today. However, I think the first few are not here, huh? Is Holly Seville here? Okay, we got Kristen. Gonna talk about that. Okay. Holly Seville has got 15 years of service. It is presenting a grateful recognition of 15 years of outstanding and dedicated service to Clay County and its citizens. So we'll present that to Holly, and we got a few words for Holly in there.
Oh, I sure do. So Holly is on a well-deserved vacation this week. She's running her kids around. She's one of our chemical health workers. She's been in the unit, I think 8 or 9 years, I think that blend together. So she does our Rule 25 assessments and case management for our folks with chemical health issues. But one of the things that Holly brings to our unit that is much appreciated by me and her coworkers, when someone is going to be on vacation or out on leave, she is the first one to volunteer to assist them. Most recently, our case aide fell and broke her wrist and had to have surgery and was out for a couple of weeks, and Holly did both her job and the case aide's job for those couple of weeks. So she's always there to jump in and say, I'll take over and do what I can to help. So that's much appreciated by all of us.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, next, Seth Piper, and I guess I don't know if he's on vacation or just working very hard.
No, so we're doing a box culvert on 2, so he's on construction.
Okay.
And he didn't want to come today.
Oh, okay, so Justin.
Yes, so Dave and I just wanted to thank Seth for his hard work. He serves as a senior engineering technician and also a bridge inspector. Seth's always on time or early. He's always willing to lend a helping hand. He's always there when you need him. So we just wanted to tell him thank you.
Yeah, I've known Seth for a few years already. Very good. Thank you. Jennifer Thompson,
She called sick.
called her sick today. Oh. You'll hold us up a little bit. No. Jennifer, excuse me, Seth had 20 years and Jennifer's got 20 years too.
Yeah, so I can't say enough nice things about Jennifer. She's been there, right now, she's our most senior employee over there. Being in longevity for 20 years in an emotionally draining field such as this, it's quite impressive. And it really, 70% of her staff don't make it past 2 years. So it's quite impressive, and that's our full-time staff, so that's quite impressive that somebody makes it 20 years. It's
Is that because of the boss or just?
It's a mixture of both. It's a mixture of both.
Is the longevity higher now that you're in charge?
Say yes. Say yes.
Such a tough question. I'll run the numbers on that one.
Thanks so much, Jenny. We're gonna get people tough to come over. Another one for 20 years, Craig Reno.
He's working way too hard right now.
Good start. Yeah. Craig's got 20 years in too.
Craig does. Craig spent most of his career as a correctional officer working shift. When Rick Stetz ended up retiring, Craig took that position and he made that transition fairly easy for our court systems and our staff down at Court Security. Craig does a good job with that. He's always on top of that, making sure everybody is to their appointments on time. And it was a very smooth transition for everybody in the court system. So we're very happy to have him in that position now.
Yeah. I've known Craig for many years. He grew up right behind me. David Johnson, 25 years.
Dave's not working as hard as Craig.
Day off.
Day off.
He tries to claim that he doesn't get any time off. But no, Dave's been with us for 25 years. Dave came to us from the Dilworth Police Department where he had a couple different roles there as a patrol sergeant and then as an acting chief. And then he came to us starting in the patrol division. From the patrol division, he went in our civil service division, which is a division, kind of an animal all of its own with all of the papers you have to be on top of and the writs and everything like that. And he spent many years there. Up until last year, he stayed in that division. He was then appointed as lieutenant of that same division, so he brought in a lot of good expertise to that area, being able to train the new staff coming in there as well. And I think probably learning a little bit right now as far as the warrants and transport side, which is another whole different animal as well, is it not?
Yes.
So Dave's done an excellent job in those divisions. He's been a very good leader within the department. We're very glad to have him as lieutenant of the Support Services Division. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you. And then to the person that keeps things rolling around here.
Yeah.
Steve. Oh no, Colleen. 25 years of service with Colleen. Congratulations, Colleen.
Well, you joke, but it's been said that a well-run department, the characteristic behind that is often the administrative assistant. The important thing is Colleen is she's knowledgeable, she's concise, she looks ahead to make sure that we all look good in what we're doing, and that's really the case here. We're fortunate to have her. The knowledge that she has over the 25 years just isn't with our department. There's often department heads that come in and rely on the experience that she has, and we're extremely fortunate to have her. So here's to the next 25.
And we'll move on up to 30 years. Sue Olson.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Sue.
30 years, holy smokes, isn't that incredible? You started when you were 6. You're not supposed to show up, because she works hard. Sue's in charge of our WIC program right now. She started out as variable hour or roster, then moved into full-time, and now just last year took the WIC director position when our former WIC director retired. So Sue's been valuable in that program, but not only in WIC, which is busy enough, she's also was previously involved in a fetal alcohol awareness grant in the past, and also nutrition education for elderly shut-ins. So she's worked in a variety of other things. Sue also facilitated our initial county wellness program, I don't know, probably over 20 years ago. Yeah. Which is still, we still have the wellness program, which Sue is still involved with, but she began that program. She also does an exercise class at noon for any employees who want to be involved in that. So she demonstrates wellness all the time. Plus, I think you were a trainer at one of the gyms, or maybe you still are. Oh, okay. She used to be, so. Yeah. Sue's a registered dietitian, and she also has a master's degree in nutrition. So she becomes a resource for even employees who have questions about nutritional things. So we look forward to the next 30 years, Sue. Congratulations.
Okay, next thing is the approval of pay the bills and the vouchers. They've been passed around.
Move approval. Second.
We got a motion by Jim, second by Kevin to approve the bills and vouchers. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Then we've got minutes from June 16th and June 23rd.
Move to approve. Second.
We got a motion by Grant, second by Jim to approve the minutes from June 16th and June 23rd. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. With that, we'll go into our weekly COVID update. Kathy McKay. Brought Cheryl along today, though.
Moral support. Really good at passing out feelers.
to give us the right information.
She's going to keep me honest. Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. As Cheryl's handing some of the regular data that we provide around, we'll wait till you get those forms, and then we can talk about that. I also, the other page is also kind of up to date through the end of May, our public health expenses just for COVID response. So you have that form as well. So you can see from the first page of our cases, so right now we have 591. The cases, have not dropped, but they aren't moving up drastically as we are witnessing across the nation with some of the southern states who are really getting to be hot spots. So thankfully we are not that yet. We have 507 that are out of isolation, or in other words have recovered and are back to their normal activities. We went up 1 death, so we now are at 38 deaths. And so in the cases, the active cases now, it was 47 previously. We've dropped now to 20. Now some of these numbers are fluid depending on when Minnesota Department of Health gets them inputted into a system called REDCap. So they're not always, they may change week to week. So they adjust the number of cases. But it's, we're doing quite well still here in Clay County in comparison again to the other states. And so there's certainly a concern as we look at what's happening with hospitalizations, those that are in ICU in the hospitals in some of those hot spots in Florida, California, Arizona. The hospitals are really ramping up with cases in ICU, those on ventilators. So it's pretty concerning. The numbers, age group, is reducing. So we're seeing a lot younger group that are positive and becoming infected. So the median age did go down. And so we're noticing more of that. They're attributing that to, certainly the COVID fatigue that the infectious disease docs talk about. It's just the being tired of dealing with COVID and all of the things that go along with that. People are tired of wearing masks. They're tired of social distancing. So we're seeing a large group of, as you noticed on the news, there's just large groups of younger folks that are gathering together. They're not wearing masks, they're not social distancing, so it's not unexpected that we would see a ramp up in those younger cases. Now those are the cases that aren't necessarily ending up in ICU or on ventilators, because typically there's outlying cases that they become very ill, but for the most part, the younger groups, especially with no coexisting medical conditions, are really being able to deal with COVID without hospitalization. They're able to get through the disease. So that's the good thing about the younger group and no coexisting conditions. So far, and Minnesota is still going up a bit as well. And you can look at the last graph. We added, so the age categories. We've always had that 30 to 39 that's been high in Clay County, but we changed a grouping from the 18 to 22. So you can see actually in that age group that's up there as well. And then the 23 to 29. So, it's not changed much, but we're seeing more in the 18 to 22. So we've handled the long-term care facilities with the elderly pretty well with all the testing and with all the other preventative measures. So we're seeing less situations in those long-term care facilities and congregate care facilities. So, that's good because they are the ones that are at more risk. Our hospitalizations, at least at Sanford and Essentia, still are the same as I have described before, where we're not seeing overwhelming numbers in ICU and in the hospitalizations. So that's good. The numbers, at least in Cass and Clay counties that Sanford and Essentia are serving, we're not seeing an overwhelming number in those hospitalizations. We're hoping to maintain that and keep that going as well. Any questions on the data? And then Cheryl can talk a little bit about working with colleges.
I think we're set. Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay.
Good morning. So a couple of weeks ago, Minnesota Department of Health put out some guidance for higher education. And I made a point of contacting our higher ed facilities to ensure that they had received that. And since that time, I've had a couple of Zoom meetings with MSUM and also with Concordia. Just assisting them because, of course, this type of planning for this fall with students coming back to campus is actually a bit overwhelming for them, because when you have students living in the dormitories, and we do have a fairly large percentage of international students that will be coming back. Now, some of those students were never able to get back home after their semester, in spring semester, so they still have some students that have been living on campus during this entire time. But for the new ones that are coming in, they're looking at the possibility of quarantining those students that are coming internationally initially to make sure that they're not bringing the virus back in with them, depending, because they come from many, many different countries. And then also just looking at how they can potentially, if they have a student that becomes ill on campus, how can they isolate or quarantine that student or those students for their duration that they need to be isolated or quarantined. Also looking at, they both are establishing medical providers for their facilities, so if they have either faculty or students that need to be tested, that they can do that pretty quickly without having to call and schedule appointments and then try to figure out transportation for students to get over there to be tested. So it's going very well, and we really appreciate that they have asked for our input as well. So we're basically serving as a resource for them from the materials that we gather between Center for Disease Control and Minnesota Department of Health. Any questions?
Do we have any idea of the numbers that come from other countries?
I don't have exact numbers for you.
I mean, to quarantine, it'd be interesting to know how many,
Right.
what kind of space you're gonna need for that.
Right. That's where they're really struggling with. Both MSUM and Concordia are looking at taking a couple of floors within their dorms to be able to house some students where, and they're looking at it, that if we have a student that lives in the region, basically, from either of those colleges, that they potentially, the best case scenario would be if they could just go home if they need to isolate or quarantine versus try to stay on campus.
And we'll continue to meet with those campuses. There's someone assigned from Minnesota Department of Health to work with the higher ed, and that individual is coming to our community next week. So Cheryl has been asked by Concordia at least to meet with them as well. So they'll be meeting with them to discuss their further planning. Some of the complications that we might run into is we're part of that Red River Valley Task Force, and North Dakota is really looking at testing all students when they come back. So that would be for NDSU and other North Dakota campuses. Minnesota Department of Health is stating that they don't feel that's a great source, good resource. It'd be a lot of work and a lot of money invested, and it's a point prevalence test. So it'll tell you just that day whether they're positive or not. Now, you might catch a few positives initially and then avoid some spread, but over time, anyone could be positive even a day or two later. So they don't feel there's value to that. We were asked by one of the campuses to do testing of their students when they come back. So there's going to be more discussion in regards to that. But at this point, MDH is saying, no, we're not going to be testing the higher ed students. So we'll see how we have another meeting this week with the Red River Valley Task Force. So we'll be discussing that further between, it's complicated between Clay and Cass because they want us to stay in step. And so as students transfer back and forth. So
Right.
we'll see how that
They're
works out.
commingling all the time.
It puts us in the position as usual being on the border, because on one of the calls late last week, they said there's between 8 and 900,000 students in the state of Minnesota. And if they were to test one, for instance, if they were to test one here in Clay County, then they'd have to test everyone in the state of Minnesota. So.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult situation for these colleges to,
Yes,
which way to go on that.
right.
Because if they have one student or two students that gets infected, that pretty much takes the whole.
Yeah, we could see a mass uptick of that, so that's concerning for the fall.
Okay.
Any questions on the, we just, I gave you the, kind of the expenses so far, and again, it goes through the 20th of May, although it doesn't include the last payroll in May, but as you can see at the bottom, we did have, or actually at the top, the Department of Human Services grant, so we had that for the hotel. So we were able to use, almost 6,000 out of that grant for that, that mission. And then we had an Otto Bremer grant as well that provided just a few supplies. So we were able to use the funding, $318 out of that. So that's been helpful. So total that weren't covered by the grant is $147,743. Still a large number, but that's from the beginning when we started, actually back in February through May.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So the 98,000 that is covered by the grant, that's through the public health grant, right? From the
Oh,
state?
and I'm sorry, we did have, thank you for bringing that up. We had some funding through Minnesota Department of Health that came to our Community Health Board, which is our 4 counties. And so we received that 98,000 out of that, sum of money. So those were all for COVID expenses as well. You're
And
right.
then maybe a question for Steve, based on Kathy's report here, the dollars that are showing, the 147, that's not covered under what she's been able to do now, that should all be covered under the CARES Act, wouldn't it?
We would need to look into that, but yeah, there'd be a very good chance that would be covered in addition to some of their salaries.
I talked to Gabe last week, and he thought maybe some of even the regular expenses, particularly for public health, because that's all that we were doing the last 3 months at least, it potentially could be covered as well. So more to come on that. We'll see what FEMA decides about that. We're keeping track. Of course, we have a separate code keeping track of all those expenses, regular and overtime expenses.
Okay. Any other questions?
Well, I think it's promising to see that our active cases are down to 20. We haven't been there since April. So we'll just continue the due diligence and hope to see that number decrease. But I think to go to what the total of COVID expense, 246,000, I think for the public to know that with 591 positive cases, that's over $400 per case. And so it's expensive in dealing with that, both even with the grant, it's still expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Those active cases that Commissioner Mosher talked about, it'd be, where are we in doing testing in comparison? If you're not doing any testing, you're going to have any new cases.
Right.
So I'm assuming there's still some testing going on.
There are testing sites on the Fargo side. I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago, the static sites. And so those were for all the long-term care staff, correct, Cheryl?
Healthcare workers and
Yeah.
then some businesses as well. So as businesses started to reopen, if they felt like they had a group of employees that needed to be tested, they could certainly, and we sent out information on that through the chamber to let businesses know that testing opportunity was available.
I guess my point is the numbers look really good right now. I just don't think, at the same point, when the people see that, they shouldn't just
Become complacent.
so
Yes.
comfortable that this thing isn't around anymore.
That's right.
If we're not doing any testing, we're not seeing any new active cases.
Right. And we anticipate, obviously, we're not done with COVID.
Yeah,
That's
well,
going to continue.
That might go on forever.
It might, right. And hopefully we'll get a vaccine in 2021. So that will help with herd immunity, so.
Right. Okay.
So as an individual, if they want to get tested, do they go to these sites or do they go to the clinics or?
Usually if they have a question, and I have gotten several calls in the last few days asking where people can become tested at, and usually I ask them if they have a medical home and recommend that they go through their provider. Both Essentia and Sanford, you can call their nurse line. With Essentia, they prefer to set up an electronic visit with the individual and then determine whether or not they can test it. And with Sanford, you call the nurse line, that person does a screening with you, and then they will basically determine or refer you to a medical provider for testing.
Okay, thank you.
And then Family Healthcare also does testing for their patients, and they also have done the vulnerable populations as well, homeless individuals. So they do testing at their facility.
Good information. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll bring the sheriff back up here. Talk about a memorandum of understanding with the DCF School District for his school resource officer.
Thanks for having us. Having you bring it in. We would like to move forward with our second memorandum of understanding with the DGF School District for the school resource officer. Currently, Deputy Jeff Lee is assigned to that position, and he's been doing that for 5 years now. It's been working out very well. The school is very happy with the population and collaboration that we do have with them. And they wish to have this program continue, as they have already reviewed the MOU and signed it with their board. The MOU was reviewed by County Attorney's Office and found to be looking good, satisfactory, and we can move forward with it.
Okay. This is pretty much the same as what we did last year.
Yeah, it's the same as what we've been doing for the past 5 years with this.
All right.
We continue to build them for 174 school days, and we pick up that portion of Deputy Lee's salary.
Very good.
I'll move to approve the MOU.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion, excuse me. Now, we got a motion by Grant, second by Kevin, to approve the MOU with DGF. Any further discussion?
I just have a comment. I continue to see, now that I have kids in the school district, and before when I did, I feel a really positive thing to have these officers in the schools for kids. My kids talk quite frequently about the officers in their school and the positive interactions that they have with them, and I think that our community has shown a pretty good respect of that, and have no doubts renewing this. I know Deputy Lee is a great asset to the community as well, and so I will continue to fully support this.
Anything else? Okay, I'll call for the, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move right into the vehicle, 2021 vehicle purchase.
Yeah, it may seem a little bit odd to be talking about 2021 squad cars already, but as I sit here today, I'm still waiting for a 2020 squad that we ordered back in September 2019. It's still not here. Obviously, the COVID had a little bit to do with that, but our car wasn't slated to be built until the first week in April anyway. We always kind of put the deadline for our squad outfitter and builder to have our cars done by the end of April, so we can get those cars sold at our spring auction. Obviously, with COVID, that kind of messed us up a little bit where we weren't able to sell our squad cars. We are looking to replace 8 cars this year. 5 of them are marked units for our patrol staff. 2 are going to be for investigations, and 1 is going to be for transports. The numbers you see there are from Auditor Johnson. They are for 2021 numbers. Those are the numbers that will be available. With the remainder, we will have to purchase new equipment for our patrol fleet at least, because of a new body design for the squads. It seems like now Ford every 3 to 4 years is redesigning the car. back in the Crown Victoria days from 1998 to 2011. They had the exact same body style, exact same frame, everything. So you could put equipment from 98 squad into 2011. It's not like that anymore. Ford is continuing to change things, redesign things. So it seems like every 3 to 4 years we're sitting here having to do new equipment, different equipment, and things like that. The remaining $97,000 would be used for that. On top of that, we would have additional funds from the, I believe, 6 cars we have waiting to sell at our spring auction, or at our fall auction now. So that would also supplement that as well.
Go ahead.
Sheriff, can you, do you have an idea on these new purchases? So that's just the price of the vehicle itself, and then you, as you mentioned, you've got to equip each vehicle, and that has an extra cost to it. Do you have a rough estimate as to per vehicle what that number would be?
Right, it's roughly total for a squad car, you're looking anywhere between 65 and 70 by the time you factor in your camera, your computer, your, all of the other equipment you're putting in it, your radio, your radar, your lights, your sirens.
I mean 6,500 to 7,000?
65,000 total per squad. This includes the 33, so you're looking at about another 20 to 25
On top of the,
on top of that.
so the equipment is almost as much as the car?
It's getting to be that way, yeah. Now, we will be able to reuse the camera and the computer and things like that, so the cost for a 2021 car additional, for the upfitting and everything, you're probably gonna be looking at another 12 to 15.
Okay. The reason I asked that is I'm comparing the new purchase to what's in the internal service fund for a kind of a matching.
And what we've done now with the internal service, about 2016, 2017, we started internal service the equipment where we never have done that before. So all of that equipment that we're putting in the car, we've been internal servicing as well.
Okay, so that's why each, for example, in 2000, under the vehicles to be sold, you have 4 2018 Ford Interceptors, and they all have different dollar amounts.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's because each one had somewhat of varying differences in the equipment.
Correct, yeah.
That's why they're-
Equipment that was able to be reused, some not able to be reused.
Okay. So are you confident that, so right now you're showing the 252 in the cost, and then you're gonna have an additional sum to upgrade them all, and you're confident that you'll have, I mean, you have 350,000 in there plus the proceeds from.
Plus the proceeds from the auction vehicles,
Yeah.
I'm confident we will have
Okay.
enough to do that, yes.
Very good. No more questions. I would move approval of the.
Okay, we got a motion to approve
Second.
by Kevin, second by Grant. Any further discussion?
I just, for the record, think I'm a little cautious just because we don't have auction funds coming in quite yet. So I'm a little cautious about approval of that with that as an unknown. I think this is another case for why having an internal service fund is important going through with that, but I'll support it today.
But there again, these cars aren't gonna be here for another year or so. probably.
Correct, the cars, I anticipate ordering them after this meeting and then not taking delivery of them until after January 1 of 2021. That way we're not paying for them until after January 1 of 2021.
That brings one final question to mind, and this is more for Steve and the sheriff and whoever you have preparing your 2021 budget. Your 2021 budget should include the upgraded costs of these vehicles that would go into internal service fund.
We have, we did talk about our internal service, and we did do an increase in there as well that we will be presenting.
Any further discussion? Okay, we got a motion by Kevin, second by Grant. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, Kirk, we'll go into your recycling grant application.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I brought Darla along with me. She's the one that did the bulk of the work.
Hello?
It's kind of an anniversary for me here today. I'm going to share this with you. I know you aren't all that interested, but 43 years ago today, I learned and 40 pounds lighter than I am right now. I learned it's the fine line between guts and stupidity. I became a smoke jumper. And on this day, I had to do 2 jumps. The first jump, I had to jump into a 9-acre lake. I don't swim a stroke. So that was really, really problematic. And then the second jump I had to make, which was even more troublesome, we had to deploy our emergency chute. So the last thing they told us before we went out the plane, they said, wait until you get to 150 feet off the ground, because if your chute tangles, you're going to have some serious problems and you don't want to get hurt too bad. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you.
Okay, just so you know, I talked to a former Marine this weekend.
Yes.
That has spent a lot of time in the Marines, and he never once knew how to swim a stroke. And he was in the U.S. Marine Corps.
And he understood the difference between guts and stupidity as well. It's a very fine line.
Sink or swim.
Yeah, exactly. At any rate, what I came before you today about is we have an opportunity to submit a grant proposal to the Pollution Control Agency. It's a pretty small grant proposal that they have. They only have about $1 million available. But one of the things that is really a problem, or has been a problem with us, are mattresses out at the landfill. As you all know, and we've talked about this before, mattresses, when we try and put them in the landfill, they have a tendency to float up to the top of the landfill. They're really tough to keep buried. They take up valuable airspace, and it's a real problem. There aren't any really good ways to try and deal with it at the current time. What I'd like to try and do is I'd like to try and ban them totally, but we don't have an alternative for getting rid of them. And so as a result, what could happen is they'd end up in the ditches or any other places that aren't appropriate. And so we're trying to figure out how we can recycle them more appropriately. So with that, as I mentioned, there was an opportunity from the PCA. They have this grant program. Darla's been working very, very hard on putting this program together, this project together for the last 6 weeks, and she's here to talk about it just briefly and ask for permission to submit the grant proposal, which is due today. So Darla.
Excuse me, before we get going, doesn't PERM take the mattresses?
Mr. Chairman, no, they ship them back, as a matter of fact. Anytime any mattresses get sent over there inadvertently, they put them in a container and send them back to us. So they don't take any mattresses at all.
I got one more question too. Can you shred them?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's one of the options. That's a possibility, but we don't have a shredder, and so as a result, that's not an option for us right now.
Okay, Doctor.
Yeah, so as Kirk had mentioned, they're a problem material within our landfill. So this grant gives us the opportunity to try and remove those. What we're asking for in this grant, it's a matching grant. So we're asking for an enclosed trailer that will keep the mattresses dry and able to be recycled. And then we will charge a fee at the landfill to cover the cost of the recycling fees later on. But for the first duration, the first year, which will start January 1st of this coming year until the end of November 30th, is the duration of this grant process. We won't be charging any fees then, but after that we will, to cover the cost of the recycling.
I would say we'd have to have more than a couple of trailers for that, almost.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we've done in the past is we've worked very closely with Concordia and also M-State and Churches United to try and recycle the mattresses. And at one time, I think this was like 3 years ago, we had about 240 mattresses we collected in a single event. But when the dorms change their beds, as they often do, the Churches United, when they change their beds, as they often do, we have to find some place to take those. We don't want those out of the landfill, and so that's what we did. We estimate that there'll be approximately 2,000 mattresses on an annual basis that we'll have to try and deal with.
And that'll be a shipment of about once a month. We would remove this trailer and bring it to be recycled and then bring it back to the location. So it would be a month worth of fill of people coming in and dropping off mattresses before we would load the trailer up and then haul it away.
So where do we recycle these, or just remind
We would recycle them through Seven Feathers Recycling. They're just on the border of Minnesota and Wisconsin, on the Wisconsin side. They charge about $15 a mattress for recycling.
Mr. Chair?
That's the cheapest we can find as well.
Yes, go ahead.
I certainly don't mind this. I heard, got a little bit of an introduction to it a week ago. Just want to clarify a couple of things from a long-term perspective, and with our new transfer station, the plan is to have a shredder. And to me, that, you know, at some point, there could be a shift then from having to pay to have them moved, but to have them shredded, which would then qualify as material that could go to Perham. And I think we would end up in the long run a lot better off with that as our option. I just need to put that out there. I'm okay with this grant application. I'm going to be talking about another one a little bit later in our agenda. But, and maybe more for Kirk, a question for you. This trailer that we would look at, is there any way that trailer down the road could be converted to top load?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner, that is a possibility. And I think that'd be something that we'd try and look at. And I think that, and I think we've talked about this just briefly, and this is just an FYI for the rest of you, we haven't talked about it here, is one of the things that Commissioner Campbell brought up, because we've gotten really kind of behind as far as loads at the Perham facility, is that we had an old trailer out there that was just sitting there. It's a used trailer, and we've spent quite a bit of money. It's not quite a bit; it's all relative, obviously. But we spent about $15,000 to $20,000 to retrofit that trailer. And it's ready now. That's my point. And what we hope to do with that trailer, that extra trailer, is on the days that Perham cannot take our garbage for whatever reason, we'll load that trailer up with acceptable garbage from the transfer station and store it until we can take 3 loads over to Perham on a particular day. But in response to your question, Commissioner, that's one of the things that I want to look at, is to see if that's something that we could possibly do, is to make the trailer that we use for this top loading for the new transfer station.
Because I would certainly highly encourage us to, you know, I certainly am supportive of the shredder. And I know Steve Moore, I think, is anxious to have that shredder, and it seems to me that that's ultimately a far better choice than to be paying $15 a mattress long term to haul someplace else when we're paying $140 some a ton at Perham, whether we use it or not. So we need to find ways to improve that, and this is one. But I support the idea and I think I saw, and maybe it was your communication to me, that you consider this to be a pilot program, which is fine. Yes. I think that's good, because even though Clay County might in the future have the shredder, many counties won't. So so what happens here could be a solution for counties who don't have the ability to shred or that have a landfill or for a place for it to go. So I support your request, but I think that we should try to see if we could, for the investment in that trailer especially, is it a 50-50 cost share, or what is it?
It'll be a full enclosed trailer, like
No, excuse me, I'm talking about the grant application itself. You said there's a local share. Is it 50-50 or?
So the local share is 25% match.
Okay.
That total would be $20,518.
And that you've got coming out of your.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's one of the things that we looked at, obviously, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner. It's one of the things we did look at, to make sure that our budget could handle it, and it can handle it. And again, what we'd like to do, and hopefully we can do, is to make a use of the trailer long-term, not
Right.
make it a short-term type project. So.
I'd like to add diversity for the trailer as well. If we can purchase a trailer that we can use for multiple things if we do need to, that's also beneficial, like there's the top loading as well.
Once our new transfer station is open in Moorhead, almost all of our garbage that's going to come out of that transfer station is going to be top load. And, so it'd be in our best interest to try to plan ahead for that. So that for our portion of that 20-some-thousand that we're investing into this trailer, a long-term use for it. But I'm hopeful, to be honest with you, I'm hopeful that at some point we won't have to send these mattresses away. I'm hopeful that we can deal with them here, send them to Perham, and get some energy out of it.
End goal, that would be fantastic.
All right.
Are we looking at taking some of the old mattresses that are there too, or just new
No,
ones?
Mr. Chairman, we aren't, those are gone. I mean, they're not
Not usable.
recyclable, they're not usable. Although, some of the, I don't want to scare you all too much, but some of these companies that actually do recycle mattresses, all they do is just basically peel off the front, and put a new front on, a new cover on, and call it good. So when you're buying a new mattress, make sure you buy from a reputable buyer. That's my suggestion. I would not buy a used mattress, let's just put it that way.
There's some good information.
Happy Tuesday.
I'll have to check my mattresses now, okay.
We probably wouldn't take yours, Mr. Chairman, we'd take it or else's now.
Thank you. Okay, we've got a request here for a grant.
Mr. Chair, I would move resolution 2020-23.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Kevin, second by Jenny, to approve resolution 2020-23 for the grant program. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Very good, thank you.
Darla, good work on that too.
Thanks,
Thank you
Darla.
for doing that.
Okay.
Kirk, you have the next one.
Kirk, you got the next one too? You want to stay here for a little bit?
I forgot all about that. It's more formal type item. It's an item that you guys have discussed before previously. And the issue is granting an additional $2,500 to Holly Township as a host fee. As you know, probably about 4 years ago, Commissioner Mojo felt that it would be a good thing to do to provide some funding to the Holly Township for having a landfill out there. And I believe the discussion that, and Commissioner Mojo, you can probably speak to this better than I, but I think there was some concern that we've got a lot of construction going on out there this year, and so there's going to be dust and odors and all traffic and all kinds of things like that. And so Commissioner Mojo felt that they probably should be compensated for that. And so that's what the purpose of this motion is.
I think it's important to note, the township has been good stewards of the money that's been allocated towards them in terms of dealing with some of those nuisances, and that was the issue behind it. 25% of this amount must be spent for waste reduction activities, I know we've acted officially on this, I think, but I thought it was important that we had a agenda item to have discussion.
I guess my question was, not that I'm opposed to this, but what about other counties? We have a gravel pit in there or something like that. Should we do something for that county because we use their roads more?
And I think that probably is an important point. I know the engineer's not here, but we've talked about dusting roads in terms of if we're hauling out of our pit and causing undue stress that way. I think this is an interesting piece. There's a lot of trucks going in and out, and the smell, and there's a lot of plastic bags that if you ask those neighbors,
I agree with that.
It's an issue.
Yeah.
And so it's a little bit different of a category, maybe.
And I agree with that. And I think, when we talk about, and of course our county pit, it's used a lot for the benefit of our county roads too. And anything that's taken out of there that isn't, there's a gravel tax that ultimately goes back to benefit the county. So from that standpoint, there is potential revenues available through other sources for some of that purpose. I guess and I know, I just wanted to comment too, that our SWAC group also agrees with this stipend, if you want to call it that, for Holly Township. I guess I do think that, with what we got going on there this year, it is an extra nuisance for them. And I mean, right now we've got some other complications going out there with some gas, with our flare being down for a while, and it's causing some potential odor issues. So they're right at the forefront of all this stuff. So I guess I don't know that we should be do it in $2,500 increments all the time, but I
was just wondering, when it says 25% of this amount must be spent on waste reduction, do we know they do that, or do we?
Mr. Chairman, yes, they do. They not only do they do waste reduction, but they do a lot of litter collection throughout the township as well. We hire roster employees, as we've talked about before. We hire roster employees, and they pick paper. It looks really good along Highway 23 out there. But if you get the Prairie Breeze, as we do just about every day around here, those plastic bags can travel for miles and miles and miles, and they're really pretty diligent about getting on that. So I've been pretty impressed with the way they've spent the money.
Okay, very good.
I'll move to approve the request.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Grant, second by Jim, to approve the request for give Holly Township $7,500. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, Georgia. We're going to talk about the mailroom administrative position.
Good morning. Rhonda's going to join me too, because we actually share this employee. We currently in the mailroom, we've had two they job share the position. It's been two permanent part-time positions. With one of the employees, we had an unfortunate situation where she ended up being out for surgery when she was due to come back for work. Prior to that week, she fell and broke her rotator cuff and had to have surgery. So now she's still out. The most recent update we've had is a tentative return date in September, but unfortunately her FMLA has expired. Again, these two positions they share. They work 4 hours in the mailroom at the Family Service Center, and then they work 4 hours for social services in Rhonda's income maintenance unit. At this point, per the Clay County policy, with after this long of being on working full-time hours, because the second employee that's been working has been doing the coverage since early on when the first employee went out. And we are looking for a little bit more consistency. Instead of replacing the position with two permanent part-times, we are recommending that we replace the position with a permanent full-time position, which would cover more consistency of the needs for social services, and I'll let Rhonda speak to that in the mailroom. I didn't mention it in the memo, but they do also work closely with our maintenance department, and we feel that the consistency of one full-time person would meet the needs of all three of our areas. The employee that will not be returning as a permanent part-time employee, we have moved her to a variable hour status, which means if we do need her, we would be able to call her in as backup if she is able at any time to return to work to do the duties.
Okay, that was my next question. I know we didn't discuss that at the PIC meeting, but I was looking for a backup there. When we make just one position out of it, you won't have a backup there, but that person will be a backup. Very good. Okay, go ahead, Rhonda.
Yeah, I would just add, as George has said, the two staff that we have worked 4 hours a day, 20 hours a week for our income maintenance unit and social services. That relationship we've had has been going on, gosh.
I think 8 years.
Eight years, and it's worked very, very well for us. Although we do like the idea of it being one person versus two, just for consistency and training purposes and things that change from week to week. So we definitely support the recommendation that the position move from 2 part-time to 1 full-time, and that would work well for our department going forward.
The one thing I did not mention either, the first employee, the one that unfortunately is out, she was at a higher rate, so there will be an overall savings to add this person to full-time status with benefits.
Does that include the after benefits?
Correct. Yep. The benefits wouldn't start. She would, if this were to be approved, the benefits wouldn't start until August, is my understanding with HR. I think it has to be a 30-day wait. There isn't a lot of difference here, but.
Mr. Chair, we had extensive discussion on this at the last PIC meeting, and I think everybody agreed it's a good move, so I'd make the motion to approve the request.
Okay, we got a motion by Grant to approve the request to make the 2 part-time positions 1 full-time.
Second.
And we got a second by Jim. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Get her done.
Thank you.
Darren, we're going to talk about participation in the state performance measurement program. I think this is a yearly thing or something that we do, don't we?
But it will be posted on the website today.
Thank you.
This report has something to do with saving paper. Oh.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for having me today. This is the annual performance measurement program that we report to the state auditor every year. We've actually been doing this since 2011. And as you see in your information sheet, last year we got $8,955 for reporting the 2018 participation. We got that at the end of 2019. The report will be posted on the website for everyone to see. And I know that some questions about this before was, you know, how difficult is it to put this report together? Are we spending more time putting it together than the money that we're getting out of it? And I would say the first or second year that was probably the case, but now that I've kind of got the templates and everything together, the departments are mostly tracking this information anyway, so they get it to me very quickly. Probably takes a half a day at that to put the report together. We are looking at doing a new survey this year. I've been working with Mark Sloan a little bit on some other questions that we want to ask. And also, as a note in there, in the cover letter for the report, is we also do citizens concern form, which we actually started in 2017. And to date, as of today, we had 158 citizen concerns that have put a form in for an issue that they have going on. Those go directly to the department, and they also go to me, and then I follow up with the departments on anything that can be solved for our citizens. So I thought it's a good tool for citizens to have direct contact with us, and like I said, 158 requests so far. It's pretty good. Right now, the stats say that in 2019, 31 cities committed to this program in 26 counties. So not a lot of counties or cities do this, but it is still a program under the state auditor's department, and I figure if we've got it templated out and already set up and we get close to $9,000 from the state for doing it, why not? So the one thing that they asked for is a resolution to continue the program for 2020. That information will be compiled and submitted to the state in July 1st of 2021 for the 2020 stats. So other than that, I'm open for questions.
I just noticed here, you said it needs a resolution. We don't have a resolution number on this one, do we, or?
I think Colleen has the resolution number. This is just the packet. Once I get the resolution number, I'll put that on there. But
Okay.
Colleen told me that she, actually, it's a resolution 2020-21. It's on the board agenda. I just didn't put that on the last page of yours.
Okay. Okay, now, this is a program we've participated, like you say, since 2011, and
Yep.
seems to be working out for us. Okay.
Yep.
Any discussion on that, or motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve Resolution 2020-21.
Okay, we've got a motion by Jim.
Second.
And a second by Grant. Any further discussion? The only thing I would say is to make sure that it is 2020-2021.
I'll
We'll
double
check that out, and,
I certainly can do that.
Yeah, whatever the number will be, I think is what.
yeah, whatever number it's gonna be, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Thank
Very
you.
good. Okay. Yeah, there you are, okay. We got requests to support Churches United Supportive Housing Development Proposal. Pastor Sue Kosterman from Churches United. And he brought someone with you.
I am. Thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. I'm joined by Joe Rizzo, who is with Beyond Shelter. They're our development partner for the proposed permanent supportive housing, as well as Rhonda Porter.
Okay. Go ahead with your proposal then.
Well, just a few months ago, back in May, we came forward to the council to gain your confirmation of the project. Since then, we're asked to do some community meetings. We did do a virtual meeting during this COVID climate that was held back in June, and we had 24 participants. Feedback was very well received. I think there might have been quite a few people from the county commission office on the call as well. And now we're requesting for support from the county.
I will say, those of us that weren't on the initial call, Rhonda did forward the link, so we were able to take part that way.
When you say support from the county, what type of support are you looking at?
We're looking for housing supports for 20 units.
I mean, as far as money, or?
Mr. Chair, if I can, I've had an opportunity to speak with these folks on a number of occasions, and I'm thankful that you had your public outreach this time around, which was early on, which was good. But in answer to your question, the county's role in this basically is to confirm the need for the project. When it comes to the finances, certainly what they're hoping for and what they would probably get through social services is the ability for them to apply for and get the housing assistance that is actually state dollars. One of my concerns early on, and I talked to Rhonda about when we researched it, and when you get into some of these things, my concern is what if the state, for some reason, which they've been known to do in the past, were to cut some of this funding? Does that financial obligation then fall back onto the county? And I know I've talked to Rhonda about that after speaking with the pastor, and I know we've had our county attorney's office review it, and we've been assured that Clay County would not have any financial obligation over and above you know, in the future, if something were to happen where the state were to stop funding. Am I correct in that?
Correct, correct. This is, so this is similar to, you know, Bright Sky Apartments that Churches United operates out in North Moorhead as well. We have what's called a housing support agreement with them for some of the folks that reside at Bright Sky Apartments. So this would be the same type of situation. We would have a housing support agreement for the Silver Linings Project for individuals that were to reside there who are eligible for housing support payments. So that's, as a part of their application to Minnesota Housing Finance, there's a letter of county confirmation that I would sign per your approval that they would submit with their application, which basically indicates that we've been engaged in the conversation about the development. We recognize that there's a need for this development in our community, and that we would intend to enter into a housing support agreement at the point that the project is ready to go.
And I might add that these housing support agreements, we have numerous numbers of them all across the city of Moorhead and throughout the county. So this isn't anything new just to this particular building. Many of our apartment buildings throughout Moorhead also qualify for these same things.
I guess that takes care of my second question then, but also, do these things go on the tax rolls, or are they all under the nonprofit thing, or you know that, or Steve, do you know whether they go on tax rolls, or?
Are you asking about the
Bright
building
Skies
itself?
Or this one?
Yeah.
Do you pay the property tax then on
Yes.
that? Okay.
Yep.
Very good, okay. Go ahead,
Yeah, so Joe, do you want me to capture? Do you want to capture?
Sure, we could talk just about the project itself. This is going to be a 36-unit supportive housing building with community space that's been very thoughtful, and I'll let Pastor Sue talk a little bit more about that. But it's for those that are 55 and older who are facing homelessness or in jeopardy of facing homelessness and need that support and housing to empower and better their lives. Pastor Sue can talk a little bit about the types of units that we have in here that are very unique to this building.
Certainly, thank you. So this is in keeping with Churches United's mission. Some years ago, prior to my joining the organization, we identified that we really wanted to move from providing shelter and emergency support to assisting people with being stably housed. And so we developed the Bright Sky Apartments in keeping with that part of our mission. Over the last 4 years, since I've been with Churches United, we've seen an exponential increase in the number of folks 55 and older who are accessing emergency shelter. Last year, we served 126 individuals in emergency shelter who were 55 and older. So the proposed development would be 36 units, all of them one bedrooms, specifically for people who are 55 and older, who are either currently homeless, have a history of chronic homelessness, or are in danger of becoming homeless. 50 to 75% of the units will go to households who make 30% or less of the average median income. The remaining will be tenants who make 50% or less of average median income. In keeping with our application to Minnesota Housing and the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines, we had a market study done which confirms the need for this type of housing in our community, very affordable housing for individuals 55 and older.
Okay. I guess my first thought comes to me a lot of times with the housing is that you build it, they'll come. So I was just wondering, it's like in Bright Skies, how long do people stay in there? After they make so much money, do they have to leave, or how does that work out? What's the average length of stay in the Bright Skies?
So the Bright Sky Apartments are permanent supportive housing, and so the lease is not time limited. People stay in their apartments as long as they meet the terms of the lease. Bright Sky has been open now a little over 2 years, almost 2 years and 3 months now, And we have probably 6 households who are residing at Bright Sky now, who were some of the original tenants. Over the course of the last little more than 2 years, we've seen some turnover in tenants, as is not unusual. But the time of the lease, it's not time limited, it's permanent supportive housing.
So when people leave there, is it because their earnings are too high, or they just went some other place?
So the folks who leave because their earning potential has raised, usually leave because they are able to find a unit that they would prefer to live in at that point. Rents are usually about 20% of a person's income, and so at a certain point, right, if a person's income gets high enough that they no longer qualify for the voucher, then they would be looking to move elsewhere. Okay. But the folks who are living at Bright Sky and the people who we would anticipate living at Silver Linings are unlikely to move on because of an income increase. And that's particularly true of our folks who are 55 and older.
Thank you for that information, and thank you for what you're doing for the homeless. Okay.
Just if I can, the one area when you deal with Bright Sky is where sometimes the elected people hear some of the things that
Yes.
go on, and so I have to bring that up. And one of the concerns that I got from some of the neighbors there, especially directly to the west of Bright Skies, and it was where they would be going across private property, say to get to the Frying Pan or the Legion that are over in that area. And that's somewhat concerning. And now this facility will face south.
Yes.
And so the back of the property would be along that ditch. Are there plans to put a fence along that back of that property?
Yeah, so let me just respond to the...
And I don't mean that,
No, I know.
I look at it maybe more from a safety standpoint with that. That's a pretty good sized water ditch and stuff there, and it could, at times could be flowing full, and if you're gonna have, well, these are all 55 and older, so you're not gonna have kids at that one,
Yes.
but, yeah, okay, you can.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to respond to that. There has been an issue with people cutting between Bright Sky and over the property line into the Pine View Cottages. We've worked hard to try to address that. We have cameras on the back of the property. There's a fence in the back of the property. Anytime that we observe that someone who is a tenant at Bright Sky is cutting across the property, our property manager has a conversation with that household or that individual, reminding them that that is private property and that it's not appropriate for them to cut across. When we have tenant meetings in the building, and we do so usually about every 2 months, although we've not lately with our current health issues that we have going on in the community. We've not had tenant meetings the last several months, but whenever we do have those, the issue of respecting private property and boundaries is raised. We do have a fence along the back property line at Bright Sky, and have plans to extend it along the garages. It doesn't appear to us, from what we have investigated and observed, that the folks who are cutting across are necessarily tenants at Bright Sky. And we believe that developing the lot for Silver Linings will probably cut down on the amount of sort of through traffic that happens along that drainage ditch, rather than exacerbating the problem.
I remember you speaking to you about that same concern, probably a year, not even a year ago, whatever, but
Yes.
I think there, you always got a situation there too, that ditch is, it's not your property.
Right.
So they can really, there's nothing you can do about it. It's,
Right.
So.
We're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're respecting our neighbors, and that's our desire to do so. We want to be good neighbors.
No, I appreciate your response to that.
I have one more follow-up question too. Pastor Sue, last week or a couple weeks ago, we also heard from Clay County HRA where they were, there's another building that's going to be going up, and we started talking about some issues within your budgeting process, both for this new one and for Bright Sky. Do you build into your budget the ability to have dollars for maintenance?
Yes.
Okay. That's can always be a concern, again, from neighbors about the aesthetics and the appearance, and to make sure that we always keep these facilities to a good-looking standard so it doesn't devalue other properties. And so I'm glad to hear that you have funds in there for that.
Yeah, and that's one of the requirements from Minnesota Housing, is that that's part of our ongoing operations budget, is to ensure that the property has the funds to be able to be well-maintained into the future of the building.
And lastly, Steve, I know Ms. Chair, you usually ask if there's people online that are interested in this. I'm just curious, do we have anybody, Steve, that's...
We've not heard from anyone, no.
Okay.
Okay, so what you're really requesting, you're just asking us to support this project?
To identify there's a need.
Yes.
Identify the needs, all right, okay. So there's no money involved in this right now or something, you just want our support for this?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you need our, I mean, not that I don't want to support this, but do you need our support to go on with this project then, or?
We do.
Okay.
I'll move the request for support.
One second.
And Mr. Chair, just if I can, follow up to your question, and this even goes back to Bright Sky. The purpose of the county's role in these grant applications is just to be able to confirm to the state that the need is there for the local community to do the project. Whether or not it should go in any particular place really isn't our business. Our business is to prove the need. It's their job to determine where within whatever community they're going to build them, that it meets their building codes and their zoning codes and those things. Those are issues that that don't pertain to us unless they were to want to put those out in some rural community. But
I'm sure they're really checked out already the needs for it, or they wouldn't be requesting this.
Right.
So we've got a motion by Grant, second by Jenny, to support this project. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I will also say that we have been in meetings in the dead of winter when the wind chill is 30 to 40 below, and we are trying to figure out where the additional homeless folks that there are no space for, where they can go to get out of the cold. I understand a project like this would help ease some of the strain on those overnight shelters as well, and so if there's anything that would identify a need, I think those meetings would definitely be one of them.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
And I once again want to just comment and thank you for the communications. I know this thing happens to be in my district, and so I think you reached out to me quite a bit for the dialogue and any concerns, and I think you've done a good job in reaching out to the public the best you could under COVID, and I just want to thank you for that, for the open communication. So
Thank you. We appreciate your responsiveness.
you bet.
All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good luck with the project. and
Thank you
for
very
doing
much.
it. Okay, I know we got a break scheduled here. Do we, anybody need a break? We do. We'll take a short break. Okay, we're ready to go again. The next item is the Federal CARES Act allocation, and consider establishing a committee to develop a policy for distribution of funds. And Steve?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. As you're aware, back on March 27th, President Trump signed into law the Federal CARES Act, which allowed $150 billion to states. The allocation for Minnesota is $2 billion, with about $884 million being allocated to cities, counties, and townships. There's been some delay, I guess, from March in establishing how that was going to be distributed, but Minnesota, on the 25th of June, Governor Walz used his executive authority in dispersing the Federal CARES Act dollars based on the framework that the Senate and the House had talked about during the special session. So in your handout, I did provide the the breakouts for the different counties, cities, and also townships here in Clay County. If you take a look at the first page, Clay County's base distribution is $7,757,282, with an additional supplemental distribution of $86,161. Now the allocation of the $86,000 is for the townships and the cities in Clay County which do not reach a population of 200 people or more. And so if you take a look on the third page, you'll see the breakdowns for the different cities in Clay County and the funding that they're receiving and or not receiving. And then the fourth page provides the breakdown of the townships and the funding that they'll receive. And so as we one of the challenges that we've looked at is they've essentially established three different guidelines in which what funding can be utilized for. There's been a great deal of frustration across the state in the guidance that we've been provided. There's about a list of 10 or 11 things that we cannot use it for. We can't use it for lost revenue generation. We can't use it for property tax. But otherwise, there's a great deal of gray area. And so the recommendation that I would have before you today would be looking at establishing a committee here at the county to look at how to utilize those funds. One of the original ideas as part of this allocation was that the legislator wanted to have a portion, the 10%, to be utilized towards small business loans or grants. When the agreement came out from the governor, that wasn't a part of the agreement, but in talking with Representative Marquardt, that's one of the things that he strongly supports, and so that would be one of the things that we would also be looking at in developing as part of the use of these dollars. And so the recommendation or the request before for your consideration would be establishing a committee. I would like to see 2 commissioners on that committee, our county auditor, our county attorney, Darren Brook, Kathy McKay, and Gabe Tweeten from our emergency management. Those people will play an important role. Again, these fundings, it's important to understand these fundings, the $7.7 million is outside of the FEMA dollars, and so we would be looking to get together here over the next few weeks to establish this. The idea is then bring forward those goals that we come with and I guess the rules and the guidelines to this board for their final approval.
Okay, so we're trying to establish a committee to help. Is there going to be there's going to be a bunch of other people on this, I take it?
Yeah, we can, one of the things that the committee can do is look at utilizing relationships with our other cities, with our EDCs throughout the county, and when we look at the potential small business grants or opportunities there. But I think that this group would provide those guidelines and the reach outs to those other agencies outside of the county.
The way I look at this committee, it could take this year and next year, and we don't know how long this committee is going to last, huh?
Well, for right now, the funding for the CARES Act is set to expire at the end of this year. We would have through December 1st as a county to put in for requests of funding, but we have another additional 90 days after the end of December to get the reimbursements. There's a possibility that there's always the possibility that the president could extend this based on the COVID pandemic continuing on. But at this point, any dollars that we wouldn't spend of those $7.7 million would be returned to the state of Minnesota. So, all right.
I don't know. Do I appoint someone, or do we look for volunteers, or?
Well, I think we could. You could look at an appointment. We could ask for volunteers. I think given the uncertainty of when this would end, with Commissioner Haney and Commissioner Whalen's terms coming to the end, it would probably make the most sense to have one of you three over here on that committee, and so Commissioner Mojo Gross or Commissioner Campbell. And so I think that having someone from the city's perspective and the rural perspective would be important. And so I guess I would leave that up to you for recommendations.
Okay. All right. If it's up to me, I'll make a recommendation that Commissioner Campbell and Commissioner Mocho will be on this committee, if they accept. If not, I'll
Well,
do it.
I'd be,
I'll work on it, yeah.
I'd be happy to. I think these dollars definitely could be used within the county, and I think that making sure that we have a good designation between the cities and the rural is important as well. So I'd be happy to work.
Okay, then, if I, as a chairman, can make a motion, I'll make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
Okay. We'll move that around. Grant make the motion. Jim second, to have Kevin and Jenny be on this committee with per diem. Any further discussion?
Well, I can comment, but it could be after the vote too. It's more about the rest of the committee, I guess.
Very good. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
So, I like what you're suggesting as the committee from the county, and maybe we should keep it to that, but as we move forward, we also see that the cities and the townships have gotten funds, and I don't want to end up duplicating something somewhere down the road. So I think it'd be important to not necessarily have other people as committee members, but maybe to keep in mind that we might want to invite city officials in or what have you to find out what they're doing. I think that ultimately these are county dollars, and it should be our county group that's doing it, but we should certainly have input, whether it's through the city and what they're doing, and we might even want to reach out. I do agree. I do want to make a point where I do agree that even though it's not a mandatory deal that Representative Markert wanted to have, but I do think it's very important that Clay County does a little bit of this to help these businesses that have suffered tremendously. And so whether we have somebody from representing the business community or something, giving us guidance on how to best go about that would be good too.
Well, and I even look at, the Barnesville's allocated a little over $200,000 to make sure we collaborate with,
Right.
with the city council and Karen Lauer from
Karen
the
Lauer,
EDA. I think that there are ways that we can work together to make the dollars stronger.
That's right.
You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you definitely want to do things that will complement to benefit the taxpayer the most.
I do think those are great ideas. One of the when it comes to the business loans or grant opportunities, businesses are only able to come one time for something. And so I think the collaboration idea would be an excellent way to go. So we have a clear path and a message for our citizens and businesses to come to.
One of these things, maybe if I could just throw this out there as an idea. So when we would meet as this committee, maybe suggest that the cities that are receiving dollars maybe could get an invite to listen in to see what discussions, and maybe we could learn what they have, and then maybe the representative of the Township Supervisors Association might be good as well.
I mean, if it is that you have until December 1st to spend allocated
That's not a
funds,
lot of money.
that's not
Or a lot of time, I
Not a
mean.
lot of time.
Right.
I mean, by the time we get organized, it'll be the middle of July, I think. And
Yeah, we'll have to be fairly aggressive in our meetings and planning. And AMC and the League of Minnesota Cities are trying to step up and provide some potential guidelines for some of the loan and grant opportunities for businesses. And so we may see some guidance there also. But I agree that we'll want to get together fairly quickly.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to our next item, which is the census. And got that on your list too?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to give everyone just a quick update here on the board and our citizens. With the COVID pandemic, we also have an extremely important census that's been started here on April 1st, and certainly the COVID pandemic has had an impact on the ability to get out and talk with our citizens. And so I just wanted to provide a little bit of information here today. Again, for our citizens, the reason why the census is so important is it has to do with our congressional seats. Minnesota has 8 seats. And if you recall, in 2010, we were about 8,000 people from losing one of those seats, going down to 7 representatives. And so we wanted to make sure that we have the proper number of people to allocate, I guess, our needs here at the state. The second piece is the census also provides over $500 billion per year to states. And that's based on this 10-year look back, and so it's extremely important that we get out. They've kind of allocated that each person that as part of the census is worth about $2,800 per year per state, per county, and so I think it's important to understand that just this one family of 4 not providing census information over that 10-year period is about $112,000, and so. It's very easy. There's 3 ways to do it. You can go online at 2020census.gov. There's 9 questions. I know Commissioner Gross has talked about it. It takes minutes. It's not something that's going to take you a great deal of time. And so you can do it online. You can do it by phone, calling in if you don't feel comfortable online or don't have access. And that number is 844-330-2020. And also, many of you may have received the questionnaire by mail. And again, you can do that, send that in. And again, just a reminder, sometimes citizens are concerned with all the different scams involved. You can go on to 2020 Census and see the example questions. And just a reminder that they're never going to ask you for your social security number, your banking information, loan information, political party related, or request any donation as part of that. That would be your example to know that there's an issue. So I did put a timeline in here. We are supposed to be at the end of this month wrapping up the self-response phase, July 31st. As you can see from the handout, that's been extended to October 31st. And so if you've not done so, to take part in the 3 different ways would be great. All with the goal, rather we were looking at the end of the year for the appointments, appropriations. We're now looking at, we'll be going into 2021 to have the redistricting done. So having said that, I also provided some information that we received from the Census Bureau on where we are as a county. As of June 23rd, Clay County has a response rate of 71.9%. This is a little bit higher than the state average of 71.2%. And there's a table here that you guys can all see where it breaks down the response rate of the cities and also of our townships. We have had a number of townships that cities within the last 2 months have seen quite an increase from earlier this summer, but we do still have a ways to go in some of our counties and townships, or cities and townships to move forward. And so would encourage our citizens to continue on and do that. So any questions at all?
Thanks for putting this on. I know I had requested it, and we'd had a report on this in some of the townships and cities where a lot less in terms of response rates. So clearly they're working to get people to interact with this. I'll just note the item that we just talked about on CARES funding is dependent on numbers. So it's not just the federal side that uses this. We really use this at the county to see how to best serve citizens, and would encourage people as much as possible to do it. They're gonna knock on your door, so it would be more comfortable for a lot of people to just do it before that happens.
And I would, thank you for mentioning that, Commissioner Mojo. I would note that July 11th is when they're going to start knocking on doors for those people that started getting the early notifications. So I know that there's, again, some concern with COVID and concern about scams. And so be aware that through the pandemic, the census is planning to come door to door. And so finishing your census will keep people coming. So.
Well, I guess I too would have to say that, I mean, it looks like a lot of people have responded already. And for those of you who have responded, I would say check with your neighbors, see whether they've responded. You know, I know you've done your part, but to continue doing your part, because this really means, this is a big thing for the state of Minnesota and for Clay County to get a good recording of who's here. So all the help we can get on this one, appreciate it. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, we'll go into Justin. You're going to talk to us about some bridge planks.
Good morning, Justin. So, the Western Minnesota Steam Threshers have requested the donation of 2 30-foot bridge planks to be used on a new concrete slab within their facility. So they were donated at Granary recently, and they kind of requested that we could donate these bridge planks to set the granary on. So we normally keep these bridge planks on hand. So we have 8 of them, and we used to use them to repair wooden bridges, but recently we've been trying to get rid of our wooden bridges and replace them with box culverts. So they've kind of just been sitting out back, and we haven't used them in quite a while. They are valued at $92 a piece.
They're used?
New.
They're old or they're new?
New. And they are coated in that creosote, so bridge planks are about the only thing that they can be used for us.
So the question is, do we keep storing them or do we get rid of them? Huh?
We do have 8 of them, so we wouldn't be getting rid of all of them. We'd just be getting rid of 2 of them.
Okay.
You know, I don't have a problem with it as long as you don't have them earmarked for anything. It makes sense because we are moving more towards that box culvert.
Yep.
And if it's taking up space and it's not something we're going to use, the steam threshers is certainly something where a lot of Clay County citizens go.
And last year we did sell a bunch of them to Cass County, so we have been getting rid of them slowly, but.
Are these ones you pulled out from places or what?
They're new, used for repairs.
Oh, okay.
Typically when they take out those wooden bridges, they're not really salvageable.
Right, right.
I don't know if there's a policy on donating or not, or whether they have to be put up for, that we've got something to donate. Or, I mean, not that I'm against this, I'm all for this, but
right.
Do we have a policy that we have to follow? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. If we're selling or offering things, there's a piece that we would have to offer to others.
Will they pick them up?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of Resolution 2020-22.
Oh, that's the next
item. No, excuse me. Wait, yeah, there's no resolution needed on this, but I would move that we approve the donation subject to review of donation regulations.
Okay. Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion by Kevin, second by Grant. To donate these to the steam threshers? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then the second item I have is we did receive bridge bond funding for the 6 federal BROS projects that we have. So the federal BROS program covers 80% of the construction cost, and we did receive the other 20% with bridge bond funding. And as required by MnDOT, a grant agreement and resolution is required to receive these bridge bond funds.
Okay,
and that is in the amount
They're the federal bros, is that what you said?
Federal BROS, bridges off system. BROS.
Yeah, bro.
Now I'll move resolution 2020-22
Okay,
And grant agreement.
and grant agreement.
okay, we've got a motion to approve the resolution and the grant agreement.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Kevin, second by Jenny. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're gonna go into recycling. Commissioner Campbell, you're gonna talk to us about that?
Yeah, a little background information. Becker County is also a member of our Lakes and Prairies, or our Purim facility. And I've had some discussions with Commissioner Larry Knutson from there, and he told me about their plans to submit a grant application for an auto-tie baler that they're looking to use there. And, you know, I just felt that I happened to be able to go there and see their facility, and it's similar to what Minn Kota does over in Fargo. And this would allow them to expand their ability to take in more. Not that I'm suggesting that Clay County would go there now, but I think anytime that somebody locally can expand their ability to handle the recycling materials. I think right now they'd have a difficult time with Moritz because they don't accept glass. I know that's another thing in their future that they're going to look at to be able to handle the separation of glass as well. But I know our solid waste director probably isn't as thrilled about this idea. He's looking at it from a standpoint of what we did earlier. This would be, Becker County would be competing with what we're asking for earlier this morning. I still look at added is still something that should be in our interest for long term. And again, I brought up today that the deal with the Box Springs is more of a short-term deal whereas this one here would be a long-term. And I think it's important if we can collaborate with our neighboring counties, we should do that. And as far as, we don't know, for example, if Holly or some of those communities in the eastern part of the state, or eastern part of the county, for example, were to get into some recycling, my guess is they're using private, kind of like Dilworth does. But that gives them an alternative place to also go for bids to handle that material. It might be in Holly's best interest, for example, if they were to do it to go to DL, then it might be to Minnesota. I don't know, but if they don't have the ability to handle it, then it's not a problem. So their grant application is in the amount of $250,000. I know that Kirk talked about that there was a total of $1 million. I don't know what that number is, if it's that or more, but I certainly think that we should. Oh, and one last thing. I've also been talking with Commissioner Knutson and Steve Skoog, their environmental director there. And currently they are hauling trucks to the Fargo landfill, and they're going back empty. And there's a potential opportunity for us to look at, and again, especially when our new transfer station is open, where we might have the opportunity to have them go to our transfer station and pick up some of our material and haul it for us. And they're going to be open to some negotiations there, so I think anything that we can do long-term to help them establish more, whether they would take it to take materials to DL or whether they would go to perm for us. All those things, I think, are things that we need to be looking outside the box for in the future. And that's why I told them I would write this letter and bring it, have it brought before you guys to, and again, that grant application deadline ends today, so they would like to know if we support their efforts. So if there's any questions, I can.
Does this,
Okay, Steve, go ahead.
apologize, does this potentially leapfrog hours though?
Well, it could, you know, and again, you know, there's only so much dollars going around, but the fact of the matter is, when I look at what we want to do with those mattresses, it's got to be a short-term solution, where the expansion of this is a long-term, more permanent availability. And leave it up to the state to determine which one is more important.
Yeah, I mean, and I totally agree with you. I think we all understand there's a need. So I guess my question would be, are we better off sending a letter that says, we support that there is a need for this type of thing? I worry that it sends mixed messages. I don't want to undercut what we're doing, obviously, but I agree, it's up to the state too, but.
I guess I agree with you, you know, I was just wondering, I mean, we're approving this for Becker, is this something that we want to get to? Do we want an auto tie baler too? Or are we going to get that when we build new building?
Yeah, I think what we're planning with the transfer station will include all of what we need locally to do those types of things. Right now, we don't have necessarily a baler system. We have a compactor system, you know, at the transfer station. So what we do and the top loading that we do, that we're going to go to, is going to be totally different. Now, again, keep in mind now, this auto baler system isn't for municipal solid waste. This auto baler is for materials that have been already separated for recycling. They're two different things. The transfer station isn't necessarily a recycling facility. It is a solid waste facility. But they're going to have the ability to at least take certain things out that Quorum does not accept.
I realize that, but I look at, you said they're only going to take something that's been recycled already. If you're going through the recycling process and you come out with cardboard here and paper here, would you have to have a baler there to do it, or you would just put that all in one truck or something like that?
That's precisely why DL is doing it. Is and keep in mind that the recycling industry, by being able to ban things, instead of having it just piled, you can compact it, which creates more storage, which then allows you also to somewhat work the market a little bit when commodity prices are down. If you have the ability to store it, you can store it until prices improve. However, that doesn't always work. However, it works great right now for cardboard. But
Does Clay County, will we use it?
we'll have the ability to use it. Right now, they're already asking us to partner with them in recycling, but we're not that far along.
We can use it, but we're not recycling anywhere, are we? We're
Sure
not separating our cardboard anyway and storing it.
Well, right now we have single sort recycling that all goes to Fargo.
Mankato.
That all goes to Fargo right now. But the more they expand their recycling facility at Becker County, the more opportunities we have in the future to have another resource.
So my first question, which normally is just our support or our money?
No, it's just our support. We're just saying that what they're doing can have a regional benefit. It can have a benefit down the road for Clay County. It can have a benefit for others in the area. And that's, in all honesty, that's what MPCA wants. They want to see anything that's in, and Commissioner Whalen sits on our solid waste, and what they're interested in when they're gonna give out money is they're looking at it from a regional standpoint. How does it benefit regionally in solid waste?
So if we do use it, if we take our stuff to Becker County, then it's gonna cost us?
Well, sure, it's gonna
Okay.
cost us no matter where we, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna cost us
But it's
there.
not gonna cost us to.
It costs us to take it to Mancota too, I think.
Right. We're gonna be paying the price per ton to process, but we're not gonna be paying for the infrastructure that got it there.
Well, your letter.
Well, I would move that we support sending this letter.
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion by Kevin, second by Jim, to support Becker County and their application for an auto tie baler. Any further discussion? All, okay, excuse me, go ahead.
I am not going to deny that there is a need for this locally. I won't be voting to support it just because I'm concerned that it will undercut applications that we're currently trying to get money for.
Any further discussion? Call for the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, 4-1 passes. Okay, with that, we'll go into committee reports. Kevin, you want to start us out?
Okay, I'll go through this quickly. We have 2 weeks here, but I'm going to go through this quickly here. On the 24th, we had a Prairie Lakes solid waste meeting. The biggest item of discussion was the MCIT is going to, if they cover that insurance for us in 2021, they're going to make us pay the full amount, all of the facilities in Minnesota. Which last year, I think they paid a significant portion of it. And we could be looking at, hundreds of thousands of dollars in insurance premiums. So we're looking at other options right now and still trying to work with them to help us out. More to come on that later. That same day, we had a public outreach meeting and land management meeting. Not a whole lot new there. Again, it was just updates on where we are with acquisitions. And then on Thursday morning, we had an insurance committee meeting, and we talked about, we went over all of the different policies, and we've had, since the first of the year, we've had 41 new employees. 26 of them were full-time that would qualify under the single. So recall when we did the change in the benefits, if this all were to carry it out over a 12-month period of time, we'd be saving about $124,900, I think is what it calculated out to be. I think that's somewhere, I think we had talked about maybe 170, but we'll see how it pans out. COVID's made a big difference in some of that. That afternoon, then I also had a Lakes Country Service cooperative meeting by phone. And again, they were going over a lot of things that have to do with the schools and COVID and policies and that type of thing. That same day at 1:30 or at 1 o'clock, we had our MCC JPA meeting. And again, we had not really many action items. We reviewed the property acquisition status report. We had some final acquisition summaries. And we did do some final agreement on a property in Clay County for purchase. And that afternoon, we had the Diversion Authority meeting. That one was also short and virtual. And again, it was kind of a recap of all the things that went on through Outreach, Land Management, and Finance Committee. Then on June 29th, I met with Kirk and the staff, a couple of staff, and then regarding the landfill construction, every 2-week meeting that we're going to be having as that goes forward, and just getting an update on the plans for the project. And we also had, at that same time, we were given a presentation regarding the grant application that we're looking at. That concludes my report.
Jim?
Thank you. On Wednesday, June 24th, I attended the Diversion Finance Committee on a meeting basis, and it was a very short meeting for that committee, and the main salient point was the attorney, John Shockley, reported on the EPA WIFIA loan, which is apparently going to close sooner at the lowest possible rate, saving the Diversion Authority. It's expected between $500 and $600 million over the course of the project, which is huge. So, then on the next day, on the 25th of June, along with Commissioner Campbell, I attended the Assurance Committee, and we had a presentation by Steve Smith, our consultant from NIS, and we removed the triple gold plan. We had a COVID-19 update. We had a claims review. Results of the dental RFP were presented, and the recommendation was that the county go with Delta Dental. And there was actually a 25% reduction in the premium costs from Delta versus our previous provider. There's a new online enrollment system, and the renewal of the consultant contract for this next year, plus self-insurance options were discussed.
With the Delta Dental, is the network the same size? Are we worried about people?
It's larger.
It's larger.
Much larger. Yep.
There's more dentists allow or accept that.
Well, I know once with the Concordia emergence, there was a lot of people that lost their providers, and so
Right.
I know that I've heard concerns from folks on that, so I appreciate that we're
Yep.
looking at something larger.
Yep. And that's my report.
Grant, can you give us a fishing report? Oh, excuse me.
Let's see, we had a solid waste, our first construction meeting last Monday, and we talked about that. And then we also talked about the mattress issue at that meeting, and then we had more in Clay County Joint Powers Agreement, we talked about Prairie Lakes, and we also had a PIC meeting, which we discussed all those issues this morning, so that was it for me.
Okay, Jenny?
Thank you. We had the Planning and Zoning Planning Commission meeting. We approved a conditional use permit in Kurtz Township for an existing seasonal storage facility. That passed with no community concerns. And then we also talked about the Hutterite existing precast building. If you recall, we changed the ordinance to allow those type of facilities in Clay County. We did have pretty significant discussion with landowners. I drove up there. It's quite an operation they've got going there. One thing that I do want to point out is the staff here had pointed out some concerns, and even before the Planning Commission, they had addressed that in terms of erosion in the ditch, and they continue to be good neighbors, and so that did pass going forward. I think there is a caution from landowners that say that it's becoming quite an industrial pocket, and so we'll continue to address their concerns going forward. At a Lakes and Prairies Community Action meeting last week as well. We had good board reports. We had the audit report. They continue to be good in good financial standing. and had our closed session for executive director. Yesterday, I attended the substance abuse work group of Clay County. We haven't met due to COVID for a few months. Updates from Jason McCoy on policy implementation for the tobacco 21 law that the president signed into ordinance or law, and good dialogue in terms of what they're hearing from businesses and if there would be a some sort of vape regulation going forward. But that concludes my reports.
Did you cover the Clay County Lands report?
I did forget that, thank you. Both Commissioner Gross and I attended the county-owned property committee last, was it Tuesday? We discussed some issues with some of the county-owned properties, some partying issues I think we'll address with access, and we've talked about the Riverton Township piece that we no longer foresee needing for landfill development, the west side of that parcel, and moving forward and what it would take to get that sold back into the public's hands. And we also talked about a piece in Elkton Township, right? Is it Elkton, Frank? Elkton? The Elkton piece. I think the highway department was going to look at soil borings if there are any gravel resources there.
Yeah, okay.
If not, we can move forward with maybe selling that piece as well.
And I think we have Kurt's Township, the party. Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
There, now that she gave that report, I've got nothing to report. So, yeah, I had the County Lands Committee and also Personnel Issues Committee, which they've both been reported on. Steve?
On the 23rd, I also attended the Lands Committee. We all discussed where the GIS is working on updating our maps to indicate hunting availability on our property. So that's something they're working on. On the 23rd, we had participated in the PIC. We've addressed a number of those things today at board. One of the things that I did want to touch on is during our market study process, we discussed at the board level about looking at going with David Drowns on a maintenance plan. And so basically they would take a look at a third of our jobs every year, so we didn't get in a spot where we were at the $1.5 million adjustment that we ended up making as part of our market study. When we originally talked, the numbers that they provided were much lower. I guess the offer they provided was a 3-year contract for $9,200 in year 1 and $18,000 in year 2 and year 3. And through talking with the PIC, we didn't pay that for our complete market study, and so we made the determination that that wasn't likely in our best interest if that was the dollar amount that they were going to charge us. And so I think Darren was going to have some additional conversations with them as far as cost, but I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware that that was a discussion that we had and the direction at least of where we're at right now. That week I also had 4 department head evaluations. On the 24th I met with Georgia and Brian Melton on a series of issues. Participated in the insurance committee on the 25th, that's been covered already. On the 25th we also had county management where we received an update from Kathy. We talked about safely returning to work and the budget process again. That afternoon participated in the MCC JPA meeting that has been covered. The one thing I would mention is we've had a couple different conversations throughout this year on property that is purchased through the MCC JPA and whether that would be available. People have interest. It was noted that industrial builders have been awarded the demolition contracts. So if people have reached out to AE2S, they would be reaching out. Industrial builders will be reaching out to you. And if there's something that you haven't expressed interest in and you'd like to do that, that would be your contact. On the 26th, I also participated in County Association technical days. We got an update on the CARES Act, some different things. And that afternoon I participated in the NACO webinar on the CARES Act, and we heard from 3 counties in Florida, Texas, and California how they implemented small business grants there. Most of the week I was off last week, so thank you guys for allowing that time off. I did participate in the AMC, League of Minnesota Cities and Minnesota Association of Townships on a webinar on the CARES Act. And so I just wanted to provide a quick update on June, in the June 9th meeting. This board requested that I submit a letter to the city of Georgetown encouraging them to work with AE2S on environmental monitoring. On the 15th, I reported that I received a response from Tammy Sather, their city clerk, that she would pass along the note to all of the council members. Yesterday, Commissioner Campbell and I received an email from Jessica Warren from AE2S about their meeting that was scheduled last night. They ended up talking to Ms. Sather, and she'd indicated that the meeting was canceled and that the council was not interested in moving forward. When, I guess, provided information to the contrary, based on the last meeting that Jessica Warren attended with Eric Dodds, they'd indicated that, well, maybe that they hadn't voted yet, but that they were going to vote at the next meeting. And so there's, I guess, some frustration from AE2S on that standpoint. Right now, the city of Georgetown is the only city that has not responded.
It's the only government entity.
Government entity that hasn't responded to AE2's request, and so I just wanted to bring forward that update to the board. So.
Okay.
Just a couple quick other things. Just a reminder, the applications for letters of interest for our 3 open manager positions for the Buffalo Red Water District run through next Tuesday. Again, we have two 3-year terms and 1 1-year term, and then we'll be having interviews here on the 21st. Budget updates, all the budgets are in. Lori's now in the process of compiling them. We start this afternoon actually going through budgets with our department heads, and you'll start receiving your first updates next Tuesday. And so that's happening here, and I just wanted to let you know I did confirm with Lori that the donation policy would allow us to donate to the Freshers. So that concludes our report.
Okay, anything else anybody want to bring up? No, we're adjourned.